Many coincidence and modern communication brought the news of a commemorative plaque being erected in Wasaga, US for Father Patrick McCabe. Happily, following a prior visit of George McLaughlin and his family, we are now able to have a gathering in solidarity at the ruins of Father McCabe's homestead in Arnahan on May the 6th, 2019. Thanks to the Mehel who came on board, Ronan, Thomas, Con, Eamon, Eugene, PJ, musicians and singers. The friends were able to gather together here to celebrate this good man with joy and gratitude. Ersko a chéile a Warren Nadini.
At the start that neither Con nor myself are historians, but we're just telling you the story in it so far as we know it.
Give you a small synopsis of John Boyle O'Reilly, who is significant to this whole event here today. John Boyle O'Reilly was born in 1844 in Doubt in County Meath to Elisa Boyle and William O'Reilly. His father was a schoolmaster in the local national school and his mother was a manager in the local orphanage. They didn't suffer that much income-wise because of their two jobs that they had as a result of famine times, and also they had very good land up in the Boyne region. John Boyle was raised with books and was interested in stories about Wolfe Tone, Robert Emmet and the 1798 rebellion, as well as current affairs. He started writing poetry at the age of just 11. As a young teenager, John Boyle got a job in Drogheda in the local newspaper as an apprentice. He worked hard for 2 and 6 a week, and he just loved journalism. All of this stood him good stead in later years. Some of his poetry was even printed in the local newspaper at that stage. When the owner of the paper died in 1859, John lost his job. He went to Preston in England and got a job with the Guardian, a local newspaper. He went up the ladder quickly, became a part-time soldier. He enjoyed life greatly, involving himself in theatre and the local church. In 1863, his father summoned him home. When he did, he enlisted with the 10th Regiment, called the Hussars, and was based in Dundalk, Cahir and Dublin. His duties were not demanding, including parading, training manoeuvres, and carrying communications from barracks to barracks. He loved the pageantry of life, and of course his blue uniform, and he was highly regarded among all his comrades. He was indeed a proud soldier. In 1858, a new revolutionary movement, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, gained a hold in Ireland. It was started by James Stephens and John O'Mahony in Paris, along with interested people in America and Ireland. Together, they worked hard to foster the uprising in Ireland that would fight for Irish freedom. Thousands of Irish were recruited in Ireland and from Britain and the American armies. John Devoy, an eminent leader, was one who headhunted John O'Reilly and urged him to join up. He took the Fenian Oath in 1863. You can see from this that they were all double jobbing at the time, but keeping it secret. The plan was to have a rising in 1865. Soon the British had gained information about what they called treason among their midst. They began to round up the leaders, and among them John Boyle, who had been an exemplary soldier. He was detained for months in Mountjoy and Arbour Hill prison. It was here that he penned many poems, among them the Old School Clock, which was hidden in a vent in a cell and discovered many years later. He waited 2 more months for his final judgment on his future. On that judgment day, he was brought to the Royal Barracks and made a show of. He was dressed in his full military uniform of the Hussars, where all his former regiment were assembled. The official affirmed his guilt. He was handed down his fate of 20 years hard labour, stripped of his uniform, dressed again in convict's clothes, shackled and taken away. At this stage he was still only just 22 years old. Later he was sent to different prisons in England, prisons where, with other convicts, they endured hard labour, isolation and disgusting food, with additions like coal and insects. In October 1867, John Boyle and hundreds of convicts, including 62 Fenians, were on the Hougoumont, a ship from Ireland bound for the penal colony in Australia. During the long voyage, the Fenians tried to keep their spirits up by having concerts. John Boyle recited his poem, The Old School Clock, at one of these. They attended masses, and they imagined that they were even going to gain control of the ship. Finally, they started a newspaper called The Wild Goose. The Irish chaplain supplied the paper, on which shamrocks were drawn and had a mixture of serious and funny articles. On the 9th of January, the ship docked in Fremantle. Now they faced an unknown future in a new land. When the region was turned into a penal colony, the idea was that the convicts would bring in cheap labour to clear land, build roads and public buildings. In 10 years, almost 10,000 convicts arrived in this region. The Fenians were dispersed, not leaving any 2 of them together. Their tough work in the heat of the day, through scrub and undergrowth, drained them, and the mosquitoes at night persecuted them. After months of hard labour, John Boyle was upgraded to the work of a clerk, doing a lot of paperwork. John Boyle's convict number was 8943. We will hear the story of his escape from the colony later, after a successful arrival in the US. He travelled from February 1869 to land in Philadelphia in November 1869. John Boyle was to make his mark in the US as a renowned journalist, a poet, an orator, an advocate for the rights of workers, slaves, a supporter of civil rights for all races. For the remainder of his life, he had a strong commitment to Ireland, to the Irish cause, such as the Land League. Another story for another time, in his important part in the rescue of further convicts from the convict colony. The 6 men rescued then are called the Capalta Six. When he died at the age of 46 from an accidental overdose of sedatives, he was greatly mourned all over America. John F. Kennedy quoted him frequently in many of his speeches when he visited Ireland. Such was his respect for his courage and wisdom. One friend said of him, he was Irish and he was American. He was intensely both, and more than both. The world was his country, and every person his kin. And now we're going to hear Thomas Tierney is going to recite for us the old school clock. And accompanied in the background with a slow air by Dara.
The old school clock by John Boyle O'Reilly. It was a quaint old clock with a quaint old face and great iron weights and chains. It stopped when it lagged. Before it struck, it creaked as if in pain. It had been many years and it seemed to say, I'm on one of the real old stock. To the youthful fry with reverence looked on the face of the old school clock. And many a time I've laboured to sketch that yellow and honoured face, with its basket of flowers, its figures and hands, and weights and chains in its place. How oft have I gazed with an admiring eye as I sat on the wooden block and pondered and guessed at the wonderful things that were inside that old school clock. But a terrible frown did the old clock wear to the truant who timidly cast an anxious eye on those merciless hands which for him had been moving too fast. But it lingered not long, for it loved to smile on the frisky youthful flock. It creaked and whirred and struck with glee, did that genial, good-humoured clock. Well, years have passed, and my mind has filled with the world's cares and ways, when again I stood in the little school where I passed my boyhood days. My old friend was gone, and there hung a thing which my sorrow seemed to mock, as I gazed with a throbbing and softened heart at the new-fashioned German clock. 'Twas a gaudy thing, with bright painted sides, and it looked with an insolent stare at the desks and the seats and everything old, and it thought of the friendly air of the face that I missed, with its weights and chains, all gone to the auctioneer's block. 'Tis a thing of the past, never more shall I see the friendly face of the old school clock. 'Tis the way of the world, old friends pass away, and fresh faces arise in their stead, but still mid the din and the bustle of life we cherish fond thoughts of the dead. Yes, dear are the memories, they've clung round my heart, and bravely withstood time's rude shock, but not one is more hallowed or dear to me now than the face of the old school clock.
When John Boyle O'Reilly wrote that, he wrote it in Mountjoy, first of all. And he was after visiting his old school down in Doubt. And I suppose it's very true what he had written. And also on this is a letter that he had written to Father McCabe. And I'll just read out the beginning of this, the introduction to it. To the Reverend Patrick McCabe, this little book is respectfully dedicated as the only means by which the writer at present can evince his deep and heartfelt gratitude to him for all his kindness. And it begins, "Dear Sir." It's very poetic and inspirational, and that's the end of the letter back there if you want to have a look at it later on. Now, the Gauna group are going to sing Fremantle Bay.
Hasn't mattered for many a year. I was born on the west coast of Clare. By the time I was married and had my own land, there were many who envied me there. Our home was contented, we had 4 lads to carry our name, but one year the crops failed and the hunger set in. I was certain that I was to blame, and it's often I think about you and our cottage a lifetime away. Though I'm chained here and bound, my heart can be found in this prison on Fremantle Bay. It was many an evening I stood by the door and looked out where the crops used to be, but the pain deep inside when I looked in the eyes of our children, it forced me to see. It was raining that night when the sheriff's men came, and the judge gave his verdict next day. For the land you have stolen, you have to be sent to a colony where you stay. And it's often I think about Julian and our cottage a lifetime away. Though I'm chained here and bound, my heart can be found in this prison on Fremantle Bay. Oh, the sun it beats down from a merciless sky, and the rocks they cut into our feet. Now the work's very hard, and there's never a break for unfortunate men such as me. Oh, we cried 'cause the shilling and 6pence to mend, but it took me away across the sea, and now I must live the rest of my days in a land that means nothing to me. And it's often I think about Julian and our cottage a lifetime away. Though I'm chained here and bound, my heart can be found in this prison on Fremantle Bay. Though I'm chained here and bound, my heart can be found in this prison on Fremantle Bay.
So now we come to the story about Patrick McCabe. Patrick McCabe was born here in Arnahan. There are several different dates given for his birth, but the one that I am going to keep to is the one that appears in this volume of the Missionary College of All Hallows, and that gives his date of birth as 1833. He was born to Patrick and Anne McCabe. Anne McCabe was Lady. The ruins of the house here show exactly where they lived, and as you can see, there's a shed here. The length of it extends right from here up to the gate above. There was a small bedroom, a kitchen, and the kitchen has a huge hearth, if you have been in through it, a huge hearth stone there, and a little parlour. And you can see a little window in the loft, window upstairs, which meant that they had two more areas upstairs. So you could say it was a five-roomed house, which was quite substantial at the time. I suppose one of the things, when I saw the hearth the other day, I didn't realise kind of what it was at the start, but I'm sure Father McCabe often thought of the Irish saying, "Ye lean hinton more the hinton fain." So in this area here, there were 6 families lived in this townland. The landlord was Henry Doppings, and you know that the Doppings lived away up at Derry Castle. That was Derry Castle House was their seat. They had property in Dublin, and they had property in Wicklow, and obviously down here. So I would say this little community down here was very tight-knit. The neighbours came and ceilidh here, and they helped one another out. I'm sure their life was very simple, that they worked their bit of land. In fact, here I see that the 6 families that were here were Daniel Leddy. He had 47 acres. Patrick Riley has 16 acres. Another Patrick Riley, who was a weaver, had 11 acres. Bernard Duffy had 87. Anne McCabe, who lived here, had 14. And the McLeods, who lived here, and that's our family connection with the McCabes. So a McCabe married a Leddy, and I'm not going to say any more about it because it's kind of too involved, but a McCabe here married a McCabe married a Leddy, and a McLeod married a Leddy. So to go back to Father McCabe, to Patrick McCabe, he went to school in Arva, to a MacDonald's school in Arva. It was probably a hedge school, and there were large numbers of children going to these hedge schools, as we know, and they had no equipment, and I don't know, was it the 3 R's that they learned? Any of the historians down there, I'm sure that's what they learned. They paid in kind or in cash, and I suppose the in kind was that they brought turf to the school, or I don't know what else they might have brought. The young Patrick would have walked to Arva. He might have gone by a pass down this way, or over the lake to come out at a point on the Arva Road. I'm not quite sure, but I would say that this whole area influenced Father McCabe in what he became later on. He knew what it was to do without. He knew what it was to have to mind his, or they knew what it was to have to subsist on very little. They would have walked a lot, which would have given them a great sense of endurance, I'm sure. As well as that, Patrick Kavanagh says that the fields, every corner of the field has its influence on us, and I'm sure the moods of the lake, and this, we can even feel it here this evening, to hear the birds and the simplicity, all that would have formed his character. After he went to Moyne, and there he learned Latin and Greek. And I suppose at this stage he had shown interest in going for the priesthood, so he had to go to St. Mel's College, and there he prepared, and I think he matriculated from St. Mel's College. On the in 1953 he left Arnahan here to go to All Hallows. He was ordained on the 31st of December 1858 and he was assigned to Bunbury in Western Australia. A good reference was sent ahead to the bishop out there with full confidence that he would be a great priest and a great missionary. I would think myself that Australia was only a name, the way maybe if we said somebody was going to the moon now, we wouldn't really understand what the moon meant or entailed. It'd be just a word, and I'd say that's exactly what Father Patrick McCabe thought about Australia before he left. And I'd say what he brought with him was very little, a small little case, maybe with a second pair of boots, a shaving kit, his breviary, a few mementos, and I suppose an overcoat, but he would have gone with very little. He set sail for Bunbury, and he landed there in 1859, I'm not quite sure what month. The place he went to was a large bush area, and his parish had hundreds and hundreds of miles. On the one side it was a wilderness, and on the other side it was the ocean. So that song actually captures where these convicts were very well, that they were totally estranged from what they knew. And I'm sure he experienced homesickness the way the convicts, and it gave him a great understanding of what they were going through. The only thing was that he had gone there by choice, and they were there because they had been found guilty of association with the Fenians. Father McCabe saw, of course, the convicts, and as Con is after saying, he saw them, the life they had to build roads and bridges, and they had long hours and laborious works, and they were under constant surveillance. It was a very, very isolated and desperate place for them to be. In the colony, Father McCabe's duties were to be a chaplain to the convicts and to the ticket of leave men. The ticket of leave people were those who got more freedom, who were kind of on parole, and there he worked with them. He got to know all of them very well, and he listened to them, I'm sure, and comforted them in their struggles. One of the people to whom he came very close was John Boyle O'Reilly. And John Boyle O'Reilly, as he became more friendly with Patrick McCabe, began to tell him how he wanted to escape. Now, he really was desperate, and there's an account somewhere of where John Boyle O'Reilly, he was suicidal at one point because he had a failed relationship with the daughter of one of the warders, and of course that would have been illicit, and he was in a very bad way. And I suppose John Boyle O'Reilly too showed leadership qualities, and maybe Father Patrick McCabe thought, well, this man would do Ireland's cause better if he was out of here. But anyway, John Boyle was very anxious to leave immediately, and Patrick McCabe told him to hold on. He would think out a plan for him. It took a couple of months to think out this plan, and Father McCabe had to convince John Boyle that it was no use for him to escape into the wilderness because they would capture him. He had to escape by sea. Father McCabe, he was called Father Mac in a familiar way out there. He knew an Irishman called Maguire, who was a respectable businessman in a nearby town, and he got him on board, and they planned that John Boyle O'Reilly would be brought by horse from the colony to a little boat who would bring it and brought to the whaler. A whaler, they were American ships that came in to trade in Bunbury, and on their route to and from America they would kill whales and sell the oil. An interesting little story about Maguire when he went to rescue him. He had to rescue him at the middle of... John Boyle had left the colony and was in hiding, and the tune that he was going to sing when he would come along so that John Boyle would get up on the horse immediately was St. Patrick's Day. So that happened. Maguire came on the horse, whistled the tune St. Patrick's Day, whisked John Boyle away and brought him to the boat. But of course, everything didn't sail along correctly. There were mishaps and misunderstandings. And the first boat that was to pick him up was called the Vigilant. And the little boat came out to meet the Vigilant. And whatever happened, the captain ignored them and off it went. So that left him in a very precarious position. However, within a couple of days, the ship, the Gazelle, came along and picked him up, and he got off. There was a huge risk, of course, for both John Boyle O'Reilly and for Father McCabe if things went wrong. Father McCabe is supposed to have paid £10 cash payment for the journey. We think that the total payment he had to pay was 30, but there was the down payment anyway of £10. And another mishap that happened was it leaked out somewhere that this plan was afoot, and another prisoner heard the whisperings, and he caught up with John Boyle and he said, if you don't bring me, I am going to tell the whole story. John Boyle O'Reilly was also supposed to exchange the clerical clothes with Father McCabe to get him away, and I don't know whether that is true or not. Eventually, anyway, John Boyle got away and arrived in America, as you heard there, but the red flags were out because it was discovered in the colony that Father Mac had helped out. So he had a discussion with his bishop, who told him, you're going to have to leave Australia immediately. He left via Adelaide, and there again he had a few mishaps. He fell from his horse, he broke his wrist, he was attacked by wild dogs. There is a reference somewhere telling that he stayed with Benedictine monks, and hopefully he was treated kindly there. It took him 3 months to get to Philadelphia, and on arrival in America he met up with his old friend John Boyle O'Reilly, and they kept up that friendship. In later years we know that Father McCabe was building a new church in the diocese where he had gone, and John Boyle O'Reilly was supposed to come and give a lecture in it to raise funds, but John Boyle unfortunately died before that happened. Father McCabe was incarnated into a diocese in Minnesota, St. Paul's in Minnesota, and it was a Bishop John Ireland that welcomed him there. He was associated with a town called Wasilla, and this at that time in Minnesota there were thousands of immigrants who had come to build the territory up, and these immigrants had come from Germany, Sweden and Scandinavian countries. It was a new state formed in 1849, and so all these settlers that came in helped to cultivate the land, to build the towns and the transportation. So I suppose in one way for Father McCabe it was something like what he left in Australia. And they, of course, these immigrants were very glad to have an Irish priest to minister to them. In conclusion, I'll leave the last word to John Boyle O'Reilly, who wrote this about Father McCabe. He said, among my friends who helped me escape was Father Patrick McCabe, a Catholic priest, whose parish extended over hundreds of miles of bush, and whose parishioners were ticket-of-leave men. His grand physical nature was joined to a spirit of noblest heroism in his holy calling. This is a picture of Father McCabe, and he supposed somewhere else describes him as being ruddy-faced and ruddy-cheeked, restless man. But I'd say even from his picture there, you'll see there was something very open and generous and cheerful about him. Anyway, John Boyle continues to say, to men of all creeds he was welcome, a scholar and a gentleman of the rarest accomplishments. He had at this time given 15 years of his life to the convicts. He rode on horseback from convict camp to convict camp, sleeping in his blanket under the trees at night. He was the best influence in my time in the whole district of Bunbury. I was fortunate during my stay in the penal colony to have this remarkable man as my friend. So we know that later on, Father McCabe, later on after John Boyle O'Reilly escaped, a further 6 escaped called the Catalpa 6. And we know that Father McCabe from America helped in arranging that rescue as well. Here in this place, his brother comes up in the 1901 census. His brother, a wife, and a son and daughter, and there the son lived here until 1944. Is that right, May? 1944, and is buried in Gowna. Before I just end, you know, I suppose now that you've heard the story, that is a lovely book to read, From the Earth, A Cry, the story of John Boyle O'Reilly. And this book, Oscailga John Boyle O'Reilly, by Nulloch O'Gara, Sean Lynch gave me that book. John F. Kennedy often quoted his poetry, and in fact when he came here to address the Dáil and the Senate, he quoted some of John Boyle O'Reilly's poetry. But to go back to Father McCabe, at the moment in America there's a group called the Fenian Memorial Committee, and by sheer coincidence, sheer series of coincidences, one of which Father Tom Murray is engaged in down there, but I also have to say that Sean Lynch down the years would have talked about Father McCabe. But a series of whole coincidences, we came to hear of this memorial in America next Saturday on the 18th of May. And George McLaughlin, who is the man who is arranging this and head of the Memorial Committee, came here down to Arnahan in the month of February to see the place. It wasn't anything like what you see here today. So they're putting a little memorial stone at his grave to remember him. And I think they hope maybe at some stage to put some little memorial around here in Gowna to him. He was a great man, came from a very simple background, and it's lovely to have a small gathering here today to remember his name. So we will have a little medley of tunes now, and then we'll have a little prayer service. Father McCabe would have been a very spiritual person himself and couldn't have done what he did if he didn't have a spirit of prayer. So thank you very much for listening. I don't know whether it made sense or not, or if anybody has anything else to add, you are welcome.
In my father's house we were poor, but we were rich in love. No TV, but music there was plenty of. And at night time neighbours rambled in and might stay till 12 or 1. In my father's house when I was young. The years have passed and times are changing. The rambling house is almost gone, but still I hear the laughter of children, just like long ago when I was young. In my father's house a smile would greet you at the door, a gentle word, even travellers there was welcome for. And at night time neighbours rambled in and might stay till 12 or 1. In my father's house when I was young, in my father's house, when I was young.
Thank you very much. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O God, come to our aid. O Lord, make haste to help us. So may, now will you start again. Beside me, Christ be before me, Christ be behind me, King of my heart, Christ be above me, Christ be below me, Christ be around me, never to depart.
Then I hear a voice saying, write down, happy are those who die in the Lord. Happy indeed, the Spirit says, not they can rest, or even after their work, since their good deeds go with them. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Today we will remember Father Patrick McCabe, who left this place as a missionary priest. We pray that Mary, Virgin and Mother, together with all the Irish saints, may lead him rejoicing to the throne of God and everlasting life.
For all those who lived in the townland of Arniahan, worked the land and lived good lives. List those who have died amongst your chosen ones. Protect and bless the home and the families of all those who reside in this area. Lord, hear us.
For ourselves gathered here today, we pray that we may live a humble and act justly and be proud of the 21st century, to acclaim our heritage and our faith. Lord, hear us.
Lord, graciously hear us. Ornyar, Atornya, Kunefradanam, Kutadagatria, Kuneta the Heller and Dalam, Marinator Ernya, Ornaron Behul, Torduinu, Oxmakun Arbeka, or Mahamich Narbeka the Faith, is Nalik Shinigahu, Oxirshanoal. Amen. At the rising of the sun and its going down, at the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, at the changing of the seasons, at the beginning of the year and when it ends, as long as we live, they too will live. For they are now part of us, and we remember them. We remember them. For all the good they have done, for the wisdom and guidance they imparted, for the faith and hope they share, for their belief in the resurrection. As long as we live, they too will live. For they are now part of us, and we remember them. We remember them. And we finish with a blessing. And this same blessing will be read in Wassika next Saturday.
May the blessing and courage from a far distant past come into our presence this day, to bring hope to this gathering and light to guide our way. May the strength of the winds ever bless us and carry us to do good things for our world. May the blessing of the one who called our ancestors to be protectors and guides, enlighten us also to give protection and encouragement to those who find themselves in unsheltered or lonely places. May we come to realize that, insignificant as we may seem to be, we have a part to play in our world, sometimes quietly, sometimes courageously. May our eyes reflect for one another a warmth, a welcome to delight the heart. May God hold us all in the hollow of his hand. Agus go many dia ilacrochtav shiv, our mark agus spirit nave.
Amen. Let us go in peace.
And let's go in peace.
Thanks be to God.
As we gather in the chapel here in old Kilmainham jail, I think about these last few weeks. Oh, will they say we failed? From our school days they have told us we must yearn for liberty. Yet all I want in this dark place is to have you here with me. Oh, grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They'll take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love I'll take this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye. Now I know it's hard for you, my love, to ever understand this love I bear for these brave men, my love for this dear land. But when Porry called me to his side down in the GPO, I had to leave my own sick bed. To him I had to go. Together. Oh, grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They'll take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye. And now as the dawn is breaking, my heart is breaking too. On this May morn as I walk out, my thoughts will be of you. And I'll write some words upon the wall so everyone will know I loved so much that I could see his blood upon the road. Oh, grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They'll take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye. Oh, there won't be time to share our love, for we must say goodbye.
There's a place in dear old Ireland that I long once more to be. If It's many miles away from here, across the lonely sea. In my heart I see it clearly, the exciting days of yore, round the hillsides overlooking Lochauna's lovely shores. Oh, what I wouldn't give right now to be back there again, to ramble round the woodlands, see the lakes and vales and dales. If you ask me for my dearest wish, it's to wander just once more, round the hillsides overlooking Lochauna's lovely shore. There's the chapel and the schoolhouse, the church upon the hill, the little stream that winds its way, you'd almost think at will. Lochleven, Woodville, Columkill, I've seen them all before, round the hillsides overlooking Lochauna's lovely shore. Oh, what I wouldn't give right now to be back there again, to ramble round the woodlands, see the lakes and vales and dales. If you ask me for my dearest wish, it's to wander just once more, round the hillsides overlooking Lochauna's lovely shore, round the hillsides overlooking Lochauna's lovely shore.